Mr. President.
Senator from Massachusetts.
Mr. President, I ask for a vitiation of the quorum call.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I rise in support of SJ Resolution 68 to prevent an unnecessary and unauthorized war against Iran. I thank my friend from Virginia, Senator Kaine, as well as Senators Dick Durbin, Mike Lee, Rand Paul, for standing up for our laws and for the United States Constitution, which gives Congress, not the President, the power to make war and to authorize the use of military force. Mr. President, the assassination of Iranian General Soleimani was a massive, deliberate, and dangerous escalation of conflict with Iran by Donald Trump. Rather than deterring new attacks on American interests, as the administration insists, Soleimani's assassination invited them, and they came in the form of airstrikes on U.S. air bases in Iraq. But instead of sharing with Congress and the American people information and intelligence to justify the Soleimani attack, President Trump and his counselors have deflected, fabricated, and just plain refused to tell the truth about the so-called imminent threat that was prevented. We now have press reports confirming that President Trump authorized the killing of General Soleimani 7 months ago. The administration doesn't just look to misrepresenting the imminent threat of Soleimani. It appears to be fabricating information intended to bypass Congress's constitutional role to authorize war. And last week, President Trump revealed more information on the killing to a Fox News personality. And he gave more information to that personality on Fox than he did in a 75-minute briefing to the entire United States Senate. That is completely and totally unacceptable. Fox News should not know more about our national security interests than the 100 senators who sit here as a responsibility to ensure that we are a check and balance on the executive branch. No evidence has yet been presented to support President Trump's outlandish claim that Iran would, quote, probably target 4 U.S. embassies, an assertion that was contradicted days later by his own Secretary of Defense. Perhaps that is why President Trump's latest defense is just to simply throw up his hands, saying, I'm sorry, I'm not giving you the information which you need. He tweets that the imminence test, quote, does not really matter because of Soleimani's horrible past. So it's no longer an imminent threat from his perspective because he says it really doesn't matter. He decides, and he decides without consultation with the United States Congress. So here is the lesson that Donald Trump seems unwilling or unable to learn. The truth does matter. In matters of war and peace, the truth is non-negotiable. Trump's reckless actions have put tens of thousands of American armed forces, diplomats, and civilians at greater risk. And his continued fabrications about intelligence threaten to draw the United States into an illegal war with the country of Iran. Look at what has happened as a result of Trump's escalation. Our Iraqi strategic partners are demanding that U.S. troops leave bases in Iraq prematurely, increasing the chance that ISIS reconstitutes itself in the region. The truth matters. Iran has announced that it was no longer bound by enrichment restrictions under the deal. This only makes it more likely that Iran will hasten its quest for a nuclear bomb. The truth matters. Despite Donald Trump's best efforts, the United States is a country that abides by the rule of law. Our laws say Congress has the sole authority to make and to authorize war. Neither the 2001 nor the 2002 authorizations for the use of military force can be used to provide legal cover for a war with Iran, and we owe it to the American people to repeal these obsolete authorizations which presidents of both political parties have abused to justify military campaigns in far-flung parts of the planet. To guard against another quagmire, as we experienced in Vietnam, Congress acted through the War Powers Resolution of 1973 to rein in presidential overreach when it came to war. That resolution, which informs our debate on the Senate floor today, makes it clear that the president cannot put our brave men and women in harm's way without a vote by Congress, or if there is an armed attack on the United States. Neither the 2001 nor the 2002 authorization for the use of military force provides legal cover for the killing of Soleimani or any other future attacks against the country of Iran. It bears repeating that a possible war with Iran did not begin with Iran's attack on the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad, nor did it begin with the president's decision to select the extreme option of assassinating Soleimani. The uptick in Iran's attacks in the region and that of its proxies can be traced to President Trump's unilateral and irresponsible exit from the Iran nuclear deal. The deal to put inspectors in every one of the Iranian nuclear facilities. The Iran deal was working. It was the best tool we have to ensure Iran never obtains a nuclear weapon. That was until Trump's capricious decision to pull out of the deal and crush Iran by ratcheting up American sanctions. Trump is now doubling down on his failed approach by ratcheting up sanctions on new sectors of the Iranian economy. This escalation will make the Trump deal that he says he wants all the more elusive. Before the United States backed out of the Iran deal, the president's own CIA director of National Intelligence, and the United Nations International Watchdog Agency all said Iran was upholding its end of the deal. Iran was upholding its end of the nuclear deal. Since then, however, Iran has moved away from its nuclear-related commitments in phases. Most worrisome was Iran's announcement last week it was no longer bound by enrichment restrictions under the deal. But we can still salvage a diplomatic outcome. All of Iran's steps are reversible. For one, Iran remains party to the Nuclear Nonproliferation Treaty, requiring it to forswear acquisition of a nuclear bomb. Additionally, international inspectors from the International Atomic Energy Agency maintain access to Iranian nuclear sites to detect and deter any ramp-up in enrichment or reprocessing. But putting the United States back into a position where we are not going to war will require a change in strategy by the President of the United States. It means a commitment from the President, one, to cease any further military action, as today's resolution calls for. Two, engage in talks with Iranian President Hassan Rouhani or other senior leaders to defuse the crisis, to support our allies as they work in good faith to preserve the Iran nuclear deal. Three, make clear the United States does not seek to impose regime change in Iran. The future of Iran must be decided by the Iranian people alone. Fourth, cease any and all threats against Iranian cultural sites and civilians. These would be war crimes. Destroying cultural sites is what ISIS does. It's what the Taliban does. It's what the Chinese government does. That is not who we are in the United States of America. And finally, we must repeal the 2001 and 2002 authorizations for the use of military force immediately. Americans strongly reject President Trump's deliberate and escalatory action against Iran. They do so not just because it is wrong, but they do not want to get embroiled into another costly war in the Middle East without end. A poll last week shows that Americans by more than 2 to 1 say the killing of General Soleimani has made the United States less safe. Sadly, they are right. In passing Senator Kane's resolution, this body has a chance to reclaim our founders' vision for the proper role of Congress. We are the direct representatives of the American people. Congress must express the will of the people to determine when, where, and against whom our country decides to go to war. We cannot and must not get pulled into war with Iran, and we cannot allow Trump to start a war all on his own. I thank Senator Kaine for his leadership on this resolution that I call upon all of my colleagues here on the Senate floor to support. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield back.